committing the lecture into the hands of God, and my something was not switched on. But anyhow, we cannot listen to the devil, and the devil must not stop us from giving gratitude to God. I will repeat it again. We give God gratitude for being able to be here this morning. And we commit this lecture into His hand. We humbly ask for His wisdom to guide us through. Right? So the devil must not silence us. We must always do our best to kick out the devil. God is with us. All right, ladies and gentlemen, back to our main deal for the day. Right. We are on risk management. Ask this. So, risk, as you do know, when people hear about risk, they're always getting scared, right? Scared of the unknown. You understand what I mean, right? People are always getting scared of the unknown. Ordinarily, it's not supposed to be like that, right? Risk in project management is an unknown event, of course, right? It's an event that is unknown. When it happens, I hope it's still working. When it does happen, it got certain consequential. You know what I mean by consequential? Certain effect, impact on the project. Right. So in project management, we don't ordinarily consider risk to be something dangerous. Right? You can as well leverage the opportunity provided by risk for you to make better your project. So by virtue of that, that is why we say risk in the project management is anything that can happen to the project which could perhaps create a kind of opportunity or disadvantage the outcome of the project. That is a simplified definition of a risk as far as project management is concerned. Right. We were able to identify some of the most common risks that one could come across in implementing the project, or what the type of risk that you could come across in a typical project environment, right? We talk about financial risk. Of course, you know, money, resources is limited, right? If there is no enough money for you to execute your project, what is going to happen? It's going to compromise your project. Of course, right? You need to have money. Then we talk about contractual risk, for example, operational risk. If you don't have the right personnel, skilled personnel to do your project, it's going to be compromised as well. We talk health and safety risk. We talk about health and safety risk. Of course, it depends on the type of project you are doing. For example, if you are doing a project that is health related or project of health concern, so you need to be able to comply with the health and safety regulation. So of failure of you to be able to comply with those regulations, it can make the government to clamp down on your project, right? And if government clamps down on your project is going to be stopped, as the case may be, right? We talked about, for example, of technical risks as well, which is on its own, it's a risk in the project. It can pose a risk. It can as well pose as an opportunity, right? You've got a project, and along the line, there happens to be a new invention or innovative stuff or innovative occurrence that can help you to be able to do the project more better than the way you used to do it. You see now, you can take leverage of that to be able to enhance the performance of your project. It's the same thing if there is a new technology and you are still struggling with the old technology, what is going to happen? You will not be able to, your output will be affected, right? So if you are not able to keep pace, hello, sit like a student, right? If you are not able to keep pace with the innovative trend, what is going to happen? You're going to be behind, right? And if your customers are people that are trend oriented, what is going to be? They're going to move from you to the other persons, right? So those are the things we are talking about. Technology is like a two-edged sword. How many of you know about a sword before? You know sword? Sword. 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 No, SWORD. Sword. Sword is like a knife, a long knife. Ah, how do you pronounce it? Okay. How do you pronounce that? Sword. Oh, you call it sword. All right. But to me, it's not sword. Okay. When they say two edge, when they say two edge, what does it mean? Two edge. It's like, sword is got two edges, right? Both edges are sharp, right? Yeah, it can cut both ways, right? So what I'm trying to say is technology is like a two-edged sword. You call it sword, right? You pronounce it sword. Okay. Let me pronounce it the way you do so that you understand what I'm saying. So it's like a two-edged sword. Right? You can either benefit or you lose. That is what I'm trying to say. If you take leverage of it, it enhances your performance. So if you are unable to keep pace, you lose out, right? So we talk about all those type of stuff, right? Now, then remember, okay, the phases of risk management, right? When you are running a project, you are implementing a project, right? We say risk is very important for you to be able to identify it, right? If you know what you are doing, you are a rational project manager. Once you are commissioned to execute a project, to implement a project as a project manager, you take the document, the project, the way it is, the project charter, whatever, then you just have to identify the risk first. It's very important because you don't want to be caught unaware, right? You have to be proactive. You know what I mean? Be proactive. You act before it happens. Preventative. They say prevention is better than cure. Prevention is better than cure. You have to make sure that you prevent yourself from being infected rather than treating the infection. Do you understand what I mean? That is what we are talking about. You identify the risk, right? Now, when you identify the risk, what do you do with the risk? You need to do a kind of assessment, right? Then you assess the risk, right? We are talking in terms of phases of risk management because the risk must be managed. If the risks are not managed, it's like you building a castle in the air. Can you build a castle in the air? Now it's gonna collapse, right? You need to manage the risk by assessing the risk. You examine the risk in terms of what? In terms of two principal concerns, two fundamental concerns. One, the probability of that risk happening. You know what we mean by probability? The likelihood. Do you understand what I mean by likelihood? The chances of this risk happening. Is it something that happens always? Right? Okay. Then the second concern is the impact, the consequences. Right? If the risk does happen, how is it going to compromise my project? Right. So based on those things, you assess the risk that you've identified. Right? Now, from your result of your analysis, you make a plan. Right? And it's true. In the real practical sense of it, in life is like that. When you've assessed something, you know how this is how it's gonna be, then you make a plan. Right? So that is what we refers to as respond to the risk. There are various ways you can respond to risk. You can, one, accept it, right? Accept it, let it happen, no problem. But the question is, I'll focus. The question is, under what circumstance will you be in a position to accept the consequence of your risk. You know what I mean by accept? Okay, you've done your assessment, for example. This risk doesn't even happen always, right? And if it does, the impact is not much. The severity means how consequential, impactful it's gonna be. So if it is just something that even if it happens, it's not gonna compromise your project, then you can afford to accept it. No problem, let it happen. I'm ready. Cannot disturb my project as such. Right? You can accept or you reject. You reject the risk. If you discover that the risk is going to burn your head, you discover that the consequence is going to be too much. And no matter the type of strategies that we institute to mitigate against the risk is going to be consequential and obviously it's going to compromise your project. Then you reject it, right? You've done this in operations management, haven't you? Okay. Now you can transfer the risk. Transfer. How do you transfer a risk? Gallant. How do you transfer a risk? Transfer. You know how to transfer something. Transfer that bag to me. Transfer your bag to me. Your bag. Yeah, you know it. Right. You can as well transfer a risk. How do you transfer it? By taking up insurance policy. Insurance. You know what is insurance? I want to make this video to be lively so that you can watch it because I see some of you are not watching it. It has to be much more lively to motivate you. You take up insurance policy. You know what is an insurance policy? Insurance. Right. The, yeah, discovery, right? You tell the insurance company, please, if it happens, come and help me. I used to watch one advert like that. I love it so much, right? Life policy. You say, when it happens, please come and help me. Right? Insurance is work like that. When you identify a particular risk in a project, perhaps you discover that this risk is going to compromise your project. Right? Then, but there's a way you can do it. You can take up insurance policy. Right. That is why in most of these projects, of course, they got insurance that whenever something unexpected happens and the insurance should come in to bail them out. That is another type of strategy. Right. Then what you do is you need to monitor the risk as the project evolves, if you like, right? During the implementation of the project, you've already identified the risk, right? You've already identified the risk. Now you've already made up, you've come up with your strategy. Then you start monitoring it. Right? Some of the strategies, some of the risks might not even happen. But if it happens, you've already got a plan, contingency plan, plan B, for you to be able to mitigate. Mitigate means, okay, that is another strategy that you can use to deal with risk. You mitigate. Mitigation. Most of you must have heard that verb before. Mitigation. Mitigation means to lessen the impact. You know how to lessen something? To cushion. To cushion. You know what is a cushion? Foam, right? If I put a foam outside, I say jump from the first floor to land on the foam, then you're gonna cushion the impact. But if I remove the foam and say jump down, you're gonna break your leg, right? Yeah. You need to mitigate. So that is what we are trying to say. Here we said prioritizing risk, right? Prioritizing is about you trying to do the assessment. Risk can be divided into three categories. It can be low, right? It can be medium or it can be high. So a risk is prioritized depending on the size of the impact on the project and the likelihood of its happening. Right. When you do your assessment, you see, of course, you look at the probability, the chances, it doesn't happen always, and even the impact, if it happens, it's not going to do much to stop your project. Then you can classify it as low, right? So it's the same thing. I've got a risk matrix. There's a kind of a risk matrix that I developed, very lovely. It's not in your textbook. I saw it somewhere, and I've been using it to teach my students. That can assist you in understanding more of what we are talking about now. Right. So a risk will is okay. What we are trying to say is if a risk is not controlled, I've already explained this, right? In the sense that I've told you you can either gain from a risk, right, or you lose. Depends on how it turns out to be. I say, remember I told you a two-edged sword. So it depends on how it is. Right, look at my risk matrix analysis, very beautiful. You cannot find this in your textbook, right? It's very lovely. You see this? Can I tell you something? You know, this risk to analyze risk, to know how to analyze risk is a career of itself, right? If you are a good analyst of risk, you can get employed and they pay you good salary because the risk is not a joke. If it happens, you don't manage it, you're going to destroy your initiative, your project, your endeavors. So if you are a good risk analyst and you analyze risk and it happens the way it is, the outcome, I'm telling you, companies can hire you. You see, so this one is a career of itself. For example, they got investment. If you can do it like an investment analyst, you see, you look at the company, then you are able to you look at the type of risk that can make the company like investment, investing money in a business. Yeah, you can work there as well. Not only in project management, right? Sometimes they see advertisement risk analyst. So it's something that you need to take it serious. So guys, look at this matrix. I love it, and it's very insightful, right? Maybe at your stage, at your level, you might not consider it to be something so very important, but at a varsity level, at a higher degree level, I mean, when you come across something like this, it's very insightful, right? So let's look at it. Impact, right? The impact is on the horizontal, right? Can you see it? Very interesting. I love it, right? Then you have the probability. Although in the exam, they might not ask you to do something like this. This one is just for your knowledge sake and for future use, right? In future for you. Then you have the probability, right? So we are trying to match the impact against the probability. I have explained to you what impact means, the severity, right? The how heavy it will be when the risk happens. Heavy the consequence, right? Then the probability is the chances of it happening, chances, right? So, for example, if you have a risk that got low impact, what is low impact? That means the weight, the severity on your project is not so it's low, right? But no, yeah, the probability is very high. The probability means the chances of such a risk happening is high. It will happen. There is no two ways about it. So how will you classify that? It's moderate. Moderate. Why do we consider it moderate? Because even if the probability is high, the impact is low. Do you understand what I mean? For example, let's talk about a project during rainy season or during winter, right? During winter, rain is going to happen, right? The probability is very high. But if you are implementing a project that is indoor. You know what I mean by indoor? Indoor and outdoor. Indoor is not going to have much effect, much, yeah. So if it is outdoor, it's going to be very consequential. So if it is indoor, you can consider it to be moderate. Again, let's look at this. It depends on what you are doing. For example, if you are painting, you know, painting, right? If you are painting outside wall during rainy season, right, it's going to have much impact if it rains because it's going to wash off. You get what I'm saying? It's going to wash off the paint. But if you are casting concrete, you know, concrete, right? It's not going to affect it much. Did you see? So if it is concrete, you can say moderate. But if it is a paint, after external wall painting, you're going to affect it much. So it depends on. No, no. Water, once it's set, what concrete sets so quickly. And once it's set, the more water you put in there, it gives more strength to concrete. Yeah. If there is no water in the concrete, it makes it to lose strength. You see, concrete, the more water that is there, the more strength it gets. Yeah. Okay. Right. Then look at, I'm not going to explain everything, just give you some of the fundamental aspects that you need to know. Then you see, very high, right? Okay, let's look at this region that is red. Those are critical conditions, critical, that you must be very careful. If you are analyzing your risk, if fall within this band, this region is critical. You must be very careful, right? Messages. But is it still working? Yeah, it's still working. Thanks a lot. Thanks for that observation. Right. Okay, guys, look at it. Hello, focus. Hello. Look at me. Don't look somewhere. Don't worry about that. Right? Okay. It's all right. Don't disturb. Guys, look at this. Look at this. The impact is very low, right? Okay. The impact is very low, right? Then this one is okay. Let me see. I'm trying to see now why they say this one is red. Maybe it's not red. Maybe it's not red. Okay, the impact, the probability is very high, right? Then the impact is very low. This one was there's a mistake here. It can be severe, right? Okay. No, okay. So severe, okay. You see, we got two bands here, severe and critical. Critical is the most dangerous one, right? Maybe because the impact is, okay, let's look at this critical one, right? You see, the impact is high. Then the probability is what? Very high. That is critical, this side. This is severe, moderate. So, but you understand what I'm trying to say now? It depends on the impact and the probability, right? Look at this. The probability is low, but the impact is very high because this impact is very consequential. That is why they consider this one to be critical, then severe, moderate. But like this one that are sustainable. Okay, let's take another good example of a sustainable one. So sustainable means you can manage it. Yeah, it's manageable, right? So essentially, this is how you need to analyze risk assessment. Risk assessment. You assess it, the whatever that is going to happen against the impact. Okay, guys, look at this, right? Look at this. Uncertainty. Capture risk with its probability and impact. Right. You see, when the risk is a threat, these are what needs to be. Either these are the how you need to manage it, right? You avoid or you escalate it, you transfer, you mitigate or you accept it. It depends on your level of assessment, right? When you look at this, you see, then When it is manageable, when it's sustainable, right, it could either be an opportunity. So if it is an opportunity, you exploit it. How do you exploit an opportunity? Taking advantage. That is what we mean. So if it is an opportunity, then you take advantage of it. Right? You escalate it, you share it, you enhance it, then you accept it. So this one is for your knowledge sake. Nobody is going to ask you at your level, right? Yeah, don't worry yourself. Then the planning process in risk management. Risk management is about what? The managing the risk, right? So you need to predict the risk and estimate the consequence. That is what we talked about before. It's like we are duplicating things. Then formulate a strategy to manage the risk. Then you implement and control the strategy. Whatever strategy that you've evolved needs to be managed, right? Evaluate the effect and consequences of the risk strategy. When you identify the risk, you've formulated strategies, you implement the strategies, you still have to come back and evaluate it. Why do you need to evaluate it? To see whether it works. Do you understand what I mean? If perhaps it didn't work for you as a lesson learned, in future project, when you have something of that nature, you know that this one didn't work. You're not gonna replicate it, right? You're not gonna reinvent the wheel. So if it is something that work for you for future project, now you replicate it because it's working, right? So that is what we are talking about. And of course, you need to document the risk management process that you've taken. So all these things are already covered what I'm going to explain now, but we are trying to unpack it, at this level. So the project manager scrutinizes the project documentation to identify risk. So what I'm trying to say here, you as a project manager, where will you look at for you to be able to identify the risk in a project? Are you going to sit at home and start looking at the ceiling and start identifying the risk? No, you're not going to do that. You need to look at the project document, right? For example, the project scope statement. Guys, younger, this thing is very important. They can ask you in the exam, right? Where the project manager should focus on to be able to identify the risk in the project. Very important. The project scope statement. What does the project scope statement talks about? It tells you the extent of what needs to be done in the project, right? So you must look at it, right? And from there, you can be able to see if perhaps there will be certain or there are certain uncertainty that could, because risk is about things that are, it's uncertainty, it's about uncertainty that you don't know what is going to happen. So you look at the scope. Perhaps you see the scope, you discover that, oh, this scope is not so much clear in terms of what needs to be done. That quickly tells you that there is a risk here because you don't know what needs to be done properly. And if you are unable to do exactly what needs to be done in a correct way, what is going to happen is going to compromise your project. So you need to look at the rules, the scope statement to see the level of clarity. Doesn't do you understand what I'm trying to say? Then you look at the WBS. What is the WBS? Work breakdown structure. Right. Look at it to see whether the tasks that needs to be done in the project are exhaustively identified. Understand? Because if you happen to omit any task there, it's going to have a problem. For example, it's going to affect your schedule, it's going to affect your cost. And that on its own is a risk that could compromise your project along the way. Does it make sense to you? Right. Then you need to look at the project schedule. You need to look at the schedule. For example, like the typical example I gave just now, for rainy season, right? During winter, you look at the schedule. See the tasks that you need to do, whether there are certain tasks outdoor that could be affected by rain, for example. Did you see what I mean? Something of such nature. Then you look at the budget of cost. For the money, the cost, will the budget be sufficient? Where is the money coming from? Is it something that is regularly accessible? If, we got a kind of a project or some kind of project, if you will, if I can put it that way, whereby you use stream of income coming from the project to finance the project. Right. So if that stream of income be generated or coming from the project, right, or cash flow, we can call it stream of income or you call it cash flow. If it is not regular enough to finance the project, what is going to happen? You're going to put that project in a financial crunch, right? Whereby it can as well compromise the project. So you need to look at that. Then again, you need to look at stakeholders. The stakeholders, you need to analyze the stakeholders in terms of what? Their expectations, right? Their goals and aspirations. Because the stakeholders itself can constitute a risk to the project. You see, in terms of their requirements. So all these things are what you need to look at. Is the period over? All right. So we're gonna continue from here next time. Risk management strategy. I've already explained it. You know how to switch it off. Good. Put it up. You don't know how to switch it off. You do it, he knows. Okay. You do it.